Hey guys, my name's Stephanie Rigg. I'm a relationship coach and host of the On Attachment podcast. And in this video, I'm answering the question of why don't anxiously attached people just date each other? So you might have wondered this if you're someone with an anxious attachment style and you've had a history of dating people with more avoidant attachments and struggled against the differing needs and expectations and preferences around relationships, particularly with respect to closeness, emotional intimacy. Anxiously attached people tend not to have an upper limit in terms of how much time they want to spend together. The relationship is so much of their priority. Their field of vision tends to be very much taken up by my partner and spending time together, all of that. And so it does beg the question of, well, why don't I just find someone else who has those same preferences as me, has that same blueprint as I do, and then I won't have to be fighting against someone else's resistance to try and get the intimacy that I want. And while that sounds very, logical and makes sense on paper, in practice, we tend not to see very many anxious pairings. And I think, simply put, there does tend to be an opposing force. That age-old thing of opposites attract, I think, actually holds some weight here. And you will know if you're more anxiously attached that you tend not to be attracted to other anxiously attached people. You tend to be attracted to avoidant people. And there are lots of reasons for that. I think, in part, we tend to be attracted to people who embody different traits to us or opposite traits to us. So for someone who's anxious and who struggles with low self-worth, who struggles with independence and confidence, to see someone who's avoidant, who seems to be, very independent, very sure of themselves, assertive, confident, that tends to be very attractive to you and you'll feel drawn to someone like that. Likewise, avoidant people see someone who's more anxious, who's very in touch with themselves and emotionally expressed and very affectionate. There's something in that is really attractive to the avoidant person who themselves is not so in touch with their emotional world and their inner landscape. And so a part of them that feels that lack or that absence within themselves is drawn to that in their anxious partner. So there is good reason that we find ourselves in this kind of yin-yang opposites attract dynamic of anxious avoidant. And for the record, I am not someone who thinks that is a doomed combination. I think it can certainly be really challenging. And if you lack the skills and the awareness to navigate it in a way that can be really healing, then it can certainly spiral into something very dysfunctional. But in terms of this anxious pairing, what you will often see if you do start a relationship with someone where you're both anxiously attached or you've both been in that role in your previous relationships, what you'll see generally is that one person will start to lean more avoidant. So while you might, normally be anxiously attached, and if you've been with avoidant partners previously, you're squarely in that anxious attachment expression. If you're with someone else who's super keen and wants to hang out all the time and wants to message all day long and wants to talk about the future and is always wanting to talk about their feelings, you might start to get a bit resistant and exhausted. So one of you typically will end up pulling back a bit. And so what starts as an anxious starts to shift into something resembling more of an anxious avoidant. Probably not to the degree of someone who is more consistently avoidant in their attachment, but you will start to see this recalibration. It's very, very rare that you're both going to sit at that same end of the spectrum and stay there once the relationship settles in. So what you'll usually see is that someone who starts as more anxious, one of you will move more towards an avoidant expression and will start to pull back, because just having both people with their foot on the accelerator, full speed ahead, tends not to be very common. So that's a bit of an overview as to whether relationships between two anxiously attached people, why they're not common and, why we don't see that very much. It really is that the attraction tends not to be there in the first place. We tend to be drawn to people with different traits to us rather than the same. And that anxious avoidant pairing is so common for a reason. And once you're in that relationship, if you do start, you'll notice that you start to shift anyway. So I do have a couple of podcast episodes that go into this in more detail that I'll link below in the description. But yeah, hope that that's been helpful. Please like and subscribe and hope to see you again soon. Thanks, guys.